People principle number 4, the hammer principle. Never use a hammer to swat a fly off someone's head. Alexander McLaren said, if you would win the world, melt it. Do not hammer it. The question I must ask myself, would others say I overreact to small things in a relationship? I can think back in our early part of our marriage for Margaret and me, I did. In fact, one of the great issues I had to work through in my own life was the fact that when Margaret and I would have an argument, I thought my job was to win. I thought my job was to prove I was right. And I would, because I'm a good debater and a good argument, I would win. I would just win. And I would just kind of want somebody to high-five me, not her, of course. And what I began to realize as that relationship increased was I was winning the arguments, but I was losing the love. And I began to pull back, and I began to understand that the hammer principle is a principle that I really needed to follow. That you just don't have to beat someone up to prove a point. When tempted to use overkill, I try to temper my behavior using the following 4 T's. You may want to embrace them when you find yourself in a similar situation. Number 1, total picture. Total picture. Before I overreact, before I use a hammer, I've got to ask myself, do I see the whole picture? Or am I like the guy who was in the cocktail lounge and a man rushed into him real quick and said, quick, do you have a cure for hiccups? And the guy reached behind the bar and grabbed a wet towel and just smacked him up across the head. And he's kind of proud of himself. He said, now, do you have hiccups now? And the guy says, well, no, but I never did. It's my wife who's out in the car. He just missed. He just missed the total picture. In your notes, do you come to conclusions long before the problem has been laid out before you? That is a common occurrence for most of us who have strong personalities. That's why I've trained myself to follow a process to keep me from hammering people with answers before they finish asking the question. When someone is sharing his point of view with me, I try to listen, ask questions, listen again, ask more questions, listen some more, then respond. The second T is timing. Dorothy Neville observed, the real art of conversation is not only to say the right thing in the right place, but to leave unsaid the wrong thing at the tempting moment. It seems to me that the most common cause of bad timing in relationships is selfish motives. For example, if you have small children, think about their timing. It's often poor, but that's because they usually think only of themselves. For that reason, when little things bother us, our number 1 objective must be putting our personal agendas aside and building the relationship. If you have examined your motives and you can be certain that they're good, then you need to ask yourself 2 timing questions. First, am I ready to confront? That's a pretty easy question to answer because that's really a matter of whether you've done your homework. And the second question is even harder. Is the other person ready to hear? If you've laid a relational foundation and the two of you are not in the heat of the battle, then the answer may be yes. Total picture, timing. Number 3, tone. In other words, it's not what I say, but it's the tone of which I say it. People often respond to our attitude and actions more than to our words. Many petty conflicts occur because people use the wrong tone of advice. The writer of Proverbs stated, a soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. Number 4, the last T, temperature. As tempers flare, people are prone to dropping bombs when using a slingshot will do. And that can cause a lot of trouble because the size of the problem often changes based on how it is handled. In general, if the reaction, here we go, this is a great test. If the reaction is worse than the action, the problem usually increases. If the reaction is less than the action, the problem usually decreases. That's why I try to follow a self-imposed guideline that I call the reprimand rule. Take 30 seconds to share feelings, and then it's over. My wife Margaret and I, for many years, have had a system that helps us in this area. Because we have found, whether it's working with our married children and in-laws in the process of family, whether it's mothers and dads or sisters and brothers, etc., we found that we need each other's help. Because there are times when one spouse wants to let the temperature get a little higher and let the emotional pitch get a little higher. And so what we have discovered is when we're in any kind of confronting situations, that we sit together. We try to, if we're in a living room or somewhere, we try to sit on the couch and we hold hands. Not because we're in love, we are in love. But we hold hands to help each other. And if any time I feel Margaret's raising an octave high, or if she feels that I am, we just squeeze each other's hands, which just means, down, boy. Down, boy. Take a pill. Relax. Take a walk. Go outside. Kick something outside. We just try to help each other because what we realize is the temperature absolutely, allowing it to get too hot, escalates everything. Now let me just stop for a moment. Do we not all have somebody who knows our buttons? Do we all not have somebody that just absolutely can push those buttons and off we go and we say, why do I let them get to me? Just remember the hammer principle. In fact, this last statement really sums it up well. Never let the situation mean more than the relationship. I have seen this violated way too often. I have seen people allow a situation become much more important than the relationship. Again, Margaret and I, we've been married for 35 years. And, you know, if you've been married for 35 years, if you're going to have a great marriage, you work out through all these things. I mean, you sit down and you get systems, and I'm a kind of a system guy anyway. And Margaret and I, if we're having a debate or an argument about something, she's strong, I'm strong. I love strong women. And this whole process, and she's kind of saying, well, I think I ought to do this, I think I ought to. We have a great system. And the system is if one's starting to press the other a little bit too much, we just look at each other and say, hey, I'll say, hey, Margaret, remember, I'm your best friend. And it just settles us. Or she'll say, John, I'm your best friend. Sometimes when I get testy, she smiles and says, John, I think I'm your only friend.